how I got started working from home, what lessons I learned along the way, some tips and tricks for keeping your sanity, especially for people with kids and family, transitioning from the office to your home, making it easier, things that the work at home veteran might even be able to get some benefit from, and a useful tip if you happen to survive the zombie apocalypse that just may save your life, but probably won't, about trash bags. And all that right now on Andy in the Wild.
Hey, you could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could.
What are you doing here? Seriously, what were you thinking? How you came back to watch another episode? Did you see the one before this? It was a disaster. That I was stiff and awkward and it sounded scripted, and that's because for the most part I did write a script almost for the last episode, but that was because I haven't done this in a long time with presenting, and so I'm still trying to get better about being able to remember what I want to talk about. And what's most important to me is getting you the information that I think is going to help you. And this is something that I enjoy doing and talking about, but I don't want to miss things. So I'm trying to keep sort of a bullet point list of what I want to talk about. Last time I just was writing sentences and I tried to follow along because I thought there were some good ones in there, but there weren't. So another thing I was worried about was that any audience who would listen to me would be filled with people that like torturing themselves. Obviously, that is proven if you have come back to watch another episode of this after seeing that last disaster. If you did not see the last episode, it was glorious. It was wonderful. It was the best thing ever produced. Never go watch it. All right. With that out of the way, I am going to tell you a little bit about how I got started working from home and why I got started, what was behind all that. It began as a change in my wife's job, which she had sacrificed for her career. In her career, she had sacrificed for me so that I could advance my career at a certain point in our marriage. Early on, this was right after we'd gotten married. She had an opportunity to take a promotion, which would have required us to move somewhere that we didn't want to go, but it would have been an incredible opportunity for her that could have led to some very big things. She turned that down so that I could move up in my career at the time. Years later, she got an opportunity to do the same, where there was a wonderful opportunity, but it required us to move. So I sacrificed in my career, and she took this job, which meant she had to move temporarily for 1 year while she got her master's degree. And then after that, her employer was going to move her wherever they wanted. There were some cities that were potentials, but none of them where we already were living, and the place I worked for did not have an office there at any of these places. So I went to my employer and I told them what was going on. I said, I've got a year, but I understand if you don't want me hanging around for a year just to leave. I was sort of in charge of the interviewing and firing process at the time. So I offered to find someone to replace me and hire them and train them. But instead, they offered me a pretty awesome opportunity. They said, stay with us and just work remotely. Now, this gave me a really great opportunity to dip my toes into the working from home environment. The way it worked was my wife had to move and she was going to school. It was an 8-hour drive to get there from where our home was. So every 2 weeks, I would drive to where she lived and I would stay there and work remotely for 2 weeks. And then I would drive back and work from my home office for 2 weeks. And that was really interesting. I got the chance to see what it was like to be away from the office and be at the office. But a lot of the initial things that make working from home difficult, I didn't exactly experience them then, because working from a remote location for a temporary time, you don't have as much of the same challenges. For example, I could kind of treat it like I was traveling for work and I just had to kind of hammer out the things I needed to get done, really focus and push through it. I didn't have to establish new routines and things like that. Not as much. And it was temporary anyway, in the sense that it was only for 1 year. So I never committed to finding some permanent pattern. So that's how I got started. It was an interesting way to go about it, but I still had that time at the office, and it made it a lot easier, I think. Now, building on top of that, when I did start working from home permanently, after my wife finished her year getting her master's degree and we were relocated, I then worked full time remotely. And every 6 months or so, I would go back to my office, or if they really needed me to go somewhere, we were living close enough that I could drive. It was still a long drive though. And I think it was 5 or 6 hours. It may have been more. So I didn't want to have to do it very often, but I would occasionally do it. I didn't always have a place to stay anymore. We still had a house there, but it was empty at that point. We had completely moved, so it was like camping in a house. I had a refrigerator, which was interesting, and a stove, but I had to like bring my own pots and pans to cook on the stove. And I would bring an air mattress with me, and I would work there. But I very rarely went to that office. I worked from home pretty much all the time. I think I went there maybe 2 times a year or something like that. I tried not to because I didn't enjoy the trip. Now, once I did end up working from home, some of the things that I learned, those early lessons that were stumbling blocks that so many people I talk to relate to and tell me they had the same things, they're ones that you can avoid. And if you're already working from home or have been for a while, you'll probably be able to relate to some of these, but also you might be able to get some benefit out of hearing them. One of them was I worked at a fairly casual workplace that I could wear jeans and a t-shirt. I never really wore t-shirts. I didn't like wearing t-shirts to my office because I had employees that worked for me. I like to set an example for them. So I would usually wear a button-up shirt, but still jeans. And I didn't have a lot of slacks or really like wearing them. So I did that. But when I was working from home, I realized that in the beginning, and this started from when I was working from the small little apartment that my wife lived in, if I didn't get up and get dressed, take a shower, put on clothes slightly nicer than I would dress for my actual office, then what happened was I would sit at my desk and work, and a couple hours would go by, and then it would be lunchtime. And the next thing I knew, I would realize half a day is gone. I haven't gotten any work done. And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting work done, why I was less productive. And that's when it occurred to me that it was because it felt like it was a Saturday. And when you get up and you work on a Saturday, you're doing extra work. And extra means it's all bonus. You're all building on top of something that doesn't have to be done. It's any work you get done is a bonus. So you don't work as hard, you're not as focused. And by getting dressed and not just sitting in my boxer shorts at my desk, it didn't feel like a Saturday anymore. I would shower, do the whole routine, and I wouldn't do it the way that I had in the beginning where I would go work for a little bit and then get up and take a break and then go jump in the shower and get ready and brush my teeth and then go back out, but I'd still be wearing like a t-shirt and some shorts or something. I would do it the same way, the same pattern I had in the morning is what I had to establish. So I would get up and treat it just like a work day. And I would do those things, but I would dress a little bit nicer. And this was only in the beginning. It's just to get you over that initial mental block of it feeling like a Saturday or a holiday or something like that. Another thing, most people don't know that this happens until they start working from home. They don't realize this is a thing, but you mentally switch between work mode and home mode. And for most people, that happens in their commute. When you get in the car and you drive to work, your mind toggles into work mode. And when you get in the car and drive home, it toggles back into home mode. And it's a real thing. Everybody I talk to has told me about how they have to figure out a way to switch that on and off. You have to find something that's going to help you to make that transition when you no longer have a commute. For me, it was a stumbling kind of thing where I just had to get used to working from home over a long period of time because I didn't know that I didn't know the ways you could find these transitions to help you learn how to make that toggle, make that switch. And one of the things that it actually really helps with is find a routine that you do every morning when you're getting ready for work and then follow that routine. But if there are things that you do when it's not a work day, when it's a holiday or a Saturday, never do those. If you get up on Saturdays and you cook pancakes for your kids or something, do not get up and cook pancakes for your kids unless that's something you do every workday. If you get up in the morning and you have a routine you follow for work, do that routine up until the point when you would walk to your car. Do the exact same thing. And then the other one that I find helps a lot of people with getting used to the new routine is establish something new in the routine that becomes the replacement for that drive that helps you switch into work mode. That could be walking down the hall to the room where you're going. It could be, I'm not sure. There's a lot of ways you can do that, but find a new thing. And for some people, that might be going in and making your coffee, something like that. That's kind of what I've done for a while. Recently, actually, is that I've started making coffee at a certain time that I use as okay, it's work time now. I've had lots over the years. This is something early on that's a problem, but as you get better at it, it won't be an issue anymore. You can switch it on and off. People come in my office all the time now and they'll start talking to me and I'll just work right through them being there for a few minutes until I finish my train of thought or whatever I needed to finish for that moment. And then I'll turn around and say, okay, what did you say? I had no idea what you were talking to me about, because people walk into your office when you work at home and they just start talking to you. Now, I know people do this at a regular office too, but usually there are doors or they knock or they don't feel as comfortable as a spouse would just coming in and starting talking to you without worrying about interrupting anything. At an office, there's a little more decorum usually, less casual. However, you get better at turning that on and off and figuring it out. The next one is, and this is something personally for me, and I think most people, this is the case. I didn't learn until I had been working at home for about 3 years that I cannot take care of my children and work from home. I didn't have kids when I started working from home, and then my daughter was born, and she was such a good baby, and my wife was there, and I was very good at watching her because she slept so much. And then my wife went back to work and she slept even more. And I thought, okay, I can take care of this kid and work from home. I actually said that. I told my wife, I said, we're good. We don't need a daycare or something like that and get her sick all the time. I've got this. I put a pack and play in the back of my office, and I would sit in meetings when I was talking in my morning meetings and stuff, and I would have my finger on that mute button just in case she cried, because I thought it was incredibly unprofessional to hear dogs barking in the background or babies crying, because it kind of is. And I would be ready, and they would ask me a question. I'd hit that mute button, and I'd answer them, and I'd hit that mute button again so that they wouldn't hear me, or if something happened. But as she got a little bit older, she slept less and needed more attention. She was starting to learn and interact with her environment and want more things to be want more awake time, sort of. I learned it really quickly. I cannot work at home and take care of kids. And I told my wife this when my daughter, I guess, was about 4 months old. I didn't even make it through a month, I don't think. So that's personally me. I cannot do that. Actually, I'll tell you the story that when we did first decide that we needed some sort of childcare, we did some interviews and we ended up hiring a nanny. And one of the first things I told her was, I said, your job is to be the bad guy. And the reason for this is I don't ever want my kids to think that my work is more important to me than they are. And from a child's perspective, the way I interpreted it was whatever I'm paying attention to is what they are going to think is important to me. So if they come in my office and I ignore them to get work done, then my work's more important than they are. So anytime my child comes in my office, I stop whatever I am doing, I turn and I give them my full attention. I am completely focused on them. I ask them questions. I do whatever they need. I'll get up and go do something for them right away. You should never do that. However, the nanny's job was to come in my office and drag them out, kicking and screaming if they were, and tell them, nope, 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 you can't be in here. And I would go, no, no, please come back. No, let her stay. It's okay. But the truth was, I work for my family. And if I can't get my work done and do it well, then I'm not serving them and I'm not doing my job as a father. And they are more important to me than my work is, obviously. But the way I show that is by getting my job done so that I can be with them when I'm not working and be fully with them. So that's sort of how that went. Moving on, transitioning from working at an office to working at home can be tough. And we've already touched on a few things like having to toggle on and off work mode versus home mode. Here are some just simple tips that'll help you along the way. I've already mentioned some of these. So dress nicer than you would at your office temporarily, but do it. And I've mentioned why. Put on shoes. Don't wear flip flops. Don't go barefoot or wear just socks. If you have a job at an office where you're allowed to go in barefoot, first of all, that's disgusting. Second of all, why? So when you put on the shoes, it just makes it feel like you're actually prepared for your day and you're ready to do something. It matters. I'll tell you another little secret that I learned working at home for a long time. When you just wear socks around all the time, like in the winter when it's cold, I have wood floors and I would go scooting room to room in the daytime when I'd be going to the bathroom or checking on things or making my lunch in the kitchen, pouring another cup of coffee, whatever it was, I'd slide from one room to the next in my socks. And after years of doing this, what I discovered is it wears your socks out so much faster than if you wear shoes. I would have never thought about it, but of course, when you do think about it, it makes complete sense. So I was sitting there complaining all the time about how all my socks were getting holes in them. So that year for Christmas, my wife bought me something I think is called house shoes. They're not like slippers. They have hard plastic soles so you can walk outside in them, and they're very nice. But that was the solution. She bought me house shoes. This is years after I'd been working from home for many years, and I no longer had to do a lot of these things because I'd learned how to make the transitions naturally. But in the beginning, do these things. Dress nicer than you would at your office. Do your normal routine. Establish a new routine to take the place of the commute. Wear shoes. And if there was something you couldn't do from your office before, then you can't do it from your office now. An example of that would be if I was at my office working remotely, working from my home office of my employer, I couldn't just walk down to the laundry room at my house and change the wash to the dryer because I'm not at home. So when you are at home, you cannot just walk down the hall and change the wash from the washing machine to the dryer because you need to learn how to focus and separate home from work. Once you've learned how to do it, it's not a big deal if you want to do stuff like that or if you can. These things, though, can creep up on you over time and start to eat away at your productivity. So establish those boundaries. All right. Those are good things. I think that actually covers a lot about the transition. But here's some do's and don'ts. These are things that I've experienced some of these, but mostly these are ones that other people have told me where they found they made big mistakes. And the reason I mention these is because I had a nice, smooth, long transition into working from home, and I didn't experience these always the same way other people did. So the first one is get your own space. Now, this one I did make the mistake, but it wasn't in the same way that other people have described it to me. Do not just set up shop on your kitchen table. And that is a thing a lot of people do. You need a room with a door that is yours. I highly recommend the door. Personally, I have a situation right now where since at least 5 years now, 6 maybe, I've been in an office that has double doors that do not lock. They close and they're just friction closed. There's a little bumpy thing that goes in and it's got a little spring in it. But my dog can walk up. One of my dogs can push the door open from the outside. And that's not ideal. It doesn't matter a whole lot for me, but if you are working from your home office and your home office is the kitchen table, you're in trouble because that is not your space. Anyone can invade it. You have no consistency. Interruptions will be constant and regular. Even when I was working from the apartment that my wife lived in, where she had a roommate and it was tiny, I was working from their kitchen table. That was terrible. Anybody who came in anytime and I had an interruption right there, I could never have a phone call because anybody could just bust in the door at any time, her roommate or one of her friends. It's a horrible, horrible structure. Do not do it. Establish an office somehow, find a way, whatever it may be, but get a space that is yours and make it your office. This also helps with the mental triggers, being in your office, not being in your office when it's work time, not work time. Another one, and I didn't have this problem so much because when I was working from home initially, I didn't have kids, but now it's more important. And that would be eventually your day needs to end. Once once you start working from home and you get good at it, the beautiful thing about it is that you can work a lot longer. I would say for people like me who like working, you can work a lot longer. I didn't sleep from my office much when I worked at one, but I did sometimes sleep in my office, and I would sometimes pull all nighters. But for the most part, I didn't because there were other things in my life that required me to leave. I had to go home to let the dogs out, or I had to go home to have dinner with my wife, or I had to go take care of something. I had to pick something up or drop something off, get the mail. There was a package on the porch. I had to go home and get it. I could not stay at my office all the time. But once you get good at working from home and you've established a routine and everything works, it's very easy to not know how to turn that trigger off and go back into home mode. It's actually a really common thing. People get trapped in this and they end up working for a really long time, and they miss out on things with their families and they miss out on things with their friends. And it sounds like it might be a great thing for people who love to work, but you definitely need to learn to find a way to know when work ends, in the beginning especially. And the last one that I'll mention is be patient. I would say this is especially true when you have roommates or spouses or kids, but this is a transition for you, but it's also a transition for them. They need to learn their boundaries. They need to learn you need to learn your boundaries. Everyone has to get used to the new situation. It's common for there to be a sort of honey-do list kind of thing where a spouse will sort of pop their head in or yell down the hall like, "Hey, could you just real quick come da blah 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 for me?" No. No has to be the answer. Don't be rude. Don't be mean. Maybe the first time they ask, you do. And then you say, "Hey, I'd love to help out with this all the time, but I really have to be able to get my work done. This is my job and it's really important. And I know that when I was at the office, I couldn't help with these things because I wasn't here, but I need to feel like I'm still at the office so that I can get my things done." It's delicate, but you have to be patient. You have to be respectful about it, but give it a little time and don't be rude or mean. I have friends that have blown up at their spouses when they worked from home sometimes, and it did no good. It didn't help either of them. It just created friction. Well, that was good. That was a lot of information, and we didn't take too long. But I do have the helpful tip still, the thing that may save your life if you survive the zombie apocalypse. But, this probably won't save your life. It's about trash bags. This is a pet peeve of mine. This is why I've come up with this one. I've been doing this for a long time. I hate, it's too strong a word. I really don't like when trash bags get stuck inside of the trash can. Because you put the trash bag in, and then you fill it with trash, and you jam it all down in there good and nice and tight, and then you got to get the bag out. But what you've done is you have created a vacuum where it is not possible for air to get in. So you're pinching the can with your knees, and you're pulling on the bag, and you're trying to get it out, and the bag starts to tear. And then you grab another spot, and it starts to tear some more. It's slowly coming out, and there's a hissing noise going around the edge of the bag where it's touching the can, and the can's pinching in. Drives me bonkers. It's really easy to deal with this, and I've been doing it for, I don't know how long I've been doing this. Here's what I do. I take the trash can, and I drill a hole, or sometimes 3 holes, depends on how big it is and how much air it needs, in the can, and that lets air in. So you put the bag in, and then when you pull the bag out, these holes allow the air to suck in to the trash can, and the bag comes out. Voila! Some people have told me that they were worried about, well, yeah, but now I have a trash can which it didn't allow air in because it's not porous, because you do not want a trash can to be porous. And now I have one that is porous. If liquids were to get in there, they would drip through these holes, or if the bag tore or something spilled, it would get in, it would come out, and the trash can is useless now. But that is not a big problem. First of all, try to drill the holes near the top. Not all the way at the top, but, I would say upper third. Second of all, put them in the back so people don't see them. You don't want an ugly hole drilled in trash can. I use like a 1/4-inch drill bit or something like that. I do it a really simple way that's kind of just because I just don't want to deal with it, and I've never really had something spill like this. But you just take a Post-it note and you stick it just above the holes, and it kind of is there. And then if something does get in and is going to drip, it drips down, it goes over the Post-it note and passing the holes. So you don't have to deal with that. Another thing you can do is take maybe a slightly thicker piece of paper or cardboard and tape it just above the holes. This doesn't prevent the holes from working to allow air in, because when you pull on the bag, even if the paper flaps down and it's covering the holes, when you pull on that bag and it creates that vacuum inside, the air pressure from outside will push that paper out of the way and bring the air in like it's supposed to. The other thing about the trash bags, that it's the same problem but for different reasons, is when the bag goes in and the air can't get out, so the bag is all squished like this, and you put that first thing in and it goes and just sits there at the top. It doesn't actually fill the bag into the can and go to the bottom like you want it to, and that is annoying. This is usually a problem. Once you drill the holes, this doesn't happen anymore. But when I go places and I'm volunteering or I'm helping out in an event or something, you see those big, round, humongous trash cans, and they're always doing this when somebody puts a new bag in. And they don't get as much trash in because those actually, the bag seals really well around the top of those, so it doesn't fill out ever. For this, what I do is I usually just go over, I can't drill holes in those giant dumpster trash can things, and it's not mine to begin with, nor would I want to, because those actually do get used a lot of times for putting liquids in. But you just tear a little hole somewhere near the top of the bag, and it's little enough, and those bags are usually heavy duty enough that they're not going to tear because of that hole when you try to take it out. And it lets that air escape. Sometimes it's slow if you do a really little hole, but that's what you do. You tear a little hole, you're all done. You can do that at home too if you want to, if you don't want to drill holes in your trash can. I don't know why they don't just make trash bags with little vents at the top, little one-way vents that allow air to go in to the trash area like that. So that's it. All right. Next time, and if you see me looking down a lot, that's because I'm trying to keep these notes. I'm still getting used to this, so I'm not looking at porn. I keep the porn over on the monitor over here. Let's see. Next time, I'm going to try to talk about some of the stories that I've heard. Yeah, so some of my own stories, some of the stories I've heard from other people about working from home. Mostly I'm going to deal with early things like the transition, but I'll get into some other stuff too. I'll see if I can find some that are fun. There are some good ones. I've got one about when someone went and they started working from home. It was actually their spouse that got annoyed because they couldn't get anything done. That was it's the opposite of what you usually hear about, but things like that. I'm going to talk about some of that, and maybe get into a little bit of how we establish those boundaries with kids, and like with my own kids, and how I make my nanny be the bad guy so I don't have to. My kids, that worked actually with the first kid. Second kid, I went to one of their days at school. It's like daddy and daughter donut day, and she had this sheet of paper filled out with my second daughter, and she had written in, my daddy's favorite thing to do is, and she wrote work, and I was like, oh, I got lazy. I reinforced it though. We went right back into that mode of, all right, when she walks in, I got to stop what I'm doing and turn to her, because she's still young enough that she does not understand. If I'm paying attention to my work, I'm doing that for her, so that I can provide for her and provide for my family, and so that I can get my job done. And then that way, when I'm not working, I am with them. I'm not thinking about work. Anyway, what else? Let's see. Do not forget, please, if you can, to rate and like and follow. You can find me at Andy in the Wild on Twitter and Facebook. What else is there? Oh, yes. If you have comments or questions, you can tweet those to me. If you have something you want me to bring up on the show, or something you'd like help with, or a question you want to ask me, you can tweet those to me. You can go to andyinthewild.com and fill out the contact form, and it'll send me an email, or you can just put them in the comments area if you're watching this and there's a comment area down below you. If it's okay with you, I might read them on the show and share them with people, because it may be something that would help a lot of other people. And if you're listening to this and you want to go give us a 5-star review on iTunes, we love those 5-star reviews. And if you don't like the show, then you're off the hook. And that's everything. Oh, one last thing. If you do visit the website, please be sure and let us know what you think. And I think you should use that comment form and send me a question. All right. Thanks a lot for listening and watching, and I will see you next time.